Have you ever noticed how sometimes when someone walks away from a relationship after betraying it, they carry this quiet confidence, that almost smug calm, as if they've won something? But deep down, behind that silence and that self assured smile, there's usually something else brewing, an emotion that hides until much later: regret, real, heavy, soul deep regret. It's the kind that creeps in slowly, after the noise fades and the thrill disappears. And no matter how confident a person looks at first, that feeling always catches up. When a woman decides to cheat, it rarely starts as a sudden, reckless act. Most of the time, it begins quietly, in the mind. A message she knows she shouldn't reply to, a compliment she secretly replays in her thoughts, a conversation she keeps going not because she should, but because it feels good to be seen again. She tells herself it's harmless, that she's just exploring her emotions, that maybe she's outgrown the man who once meant everything. It sounds empowering in her head, like freedom, like self-discovery, but underneath that illusion is usually something much more fragile: emptiness. She isn't running towards something better, she's running away from something inside herself. At first, it feels thrilling. The attention, the validation, the way the new person makes her feel alive again, it's intoxicating. For a little while, it seems like she's finally the one in control, finally the one being pursued instead of doing the giving. But that feeling doesn't last, because attention fades. Compliments become repetitive. The excitement that once felt like liberation begins to feel like noise. And that's when the cracks start to show. The man who entertains another man's partner rarely offers respect. He's there for the chase, not for the commitment. He's drawn to the idea of what's forbidden, not to the depth of her soul. And sooner or later, she begins to see it, that she traded something real for something temporary. That's the moment reality starts to whisper, softly at first, then louder over time. She begins to realize that she didn't just lose a man, she lost someone who cared deeply, someone who would have stood by her when things were hard. The one who believed in her, even when she stopped believing in herself. But by the time this truth sets in, it's usually too late. The man she left behind has already changed. The heartbreak that once broke him became the fire that rebuilt him. He stopped chasing answers and started chasing growth. He stopped needing closure and started building peace. And she's left looking back, not just at what she did, but at what she destroyed. You see, betrayal doesn't just wound the person who's betrayed, it changes the one who betrays too. When someone cheats, they think they're escaping unhappiness, but what they're really escaping is accountability. They tell themselves stories to make it make sense. He changed, I wasn't happy, I deserve more. But deep down, it's usually not about any of that. It's about filling a void they never learned to face. Then that's where the real damage begins. Because no matter how many smiles they post, no matter how hard they pretend to have moved on, the guilt lingers. It hides in the quiet moments, the empty bed, the late night scroll through old pictures, the memory of a laugh that used to make them feel safe. The guilt doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in the smallest reminders, and every whisper sounds like the truth they tried to bury. That truth hurts more than any consequence because it exposes what they lost, their own sense of honesty, their ability to love without deception. And while she's trying to distract herself from that realization, the man she betrayed is evolving. At first, he's broken, confused, angry. He questions everything: his worth, his choices, his judgment. But as time passes, pain becomes purpose. He learns to channel what hurt him into growth. He starts focusing on himself, not out of bitterness, but out of understanding. He stops needing to prove his value to anyone. And in that transformation, something beautiful happens. He regains the peace she once took for granted. That peace is what eventually haunts her. Because while she's still trying to convince herself that she made the right choice, he's already living proof that her decision didn't define him, it freed him. The same silence she once mistook for weakness becomes the proof of his strength. And the same stillness that used to make her feel in control now reminds her of what she lost. She'll look back and realize that he didn't need revenge. He just needed healing. And in healing, he became untouchable. Time has a way of revealing what truth tries to hide. At first, she feels relieved, almost free. She believes she made the right choice, that walking away or betraying him was part of her growth. She'll tell herself, and everyone who will listen, that she needed to put herself first, that the relationship had run its course. And for a while, that story works. It helps her silence the guilt. But stories have a way of unraveling when reality doesn't match the fantasy. Eventually, the excitement fades, and she starts to feel the emptiness she thought she'd escaped. The attention that once felt so addictive now feels shallow. The new man's charm becomes predictable. The conversations lose their spark. And somewhere between pretending she's happy and trying to convince herself she is, regret starts to whisper. It begins with small thoughts. wondering what he's doing, if he's moved on, if he ever really loved her. She tries to ignore it, but the mind has a way of circling back to unfinished emotions. The more she sees him rebuilding, smiling again, growing stronger, the more she realizes that he was the one who truly cared. She'll scroll through his photos, see the peace in his eyes, and that calm will burn her more than anger ever could, because it means he's healed and she hasn't. She might try to fill the silence. Social media posts about self-love, photos with new people, quotes about moving on. But beneath every caption, behind every smile, there's an ache she can't admit. The guilt doesn't fade. It just hides behind distractions. And the harder she tries to bury it, the heavier it becomes. That's the unseen side of betrayal, the psychological crash that follows the thrill. When she finally sits in silence without validation or attention to drown the noise, she's left with herself, her thoughts, and the realization that she lost something irreplaceable. Not just the man she hurt, but the version of herself that was pure, loyal, and real. See, guilt isn't just a feeling, it's a mirror. Life reflects back to her the same pain she caused. The same way she made him feel unseen, someone else makes her invisible. The same way she made him question his worth, someone now treats her like an option. That's not revenge, it's balance. Life has a way of teaching lessons through repetition until they're learned. And when she finally lies awake at night, scrolling through old memories, that's when the truth hits her hardest. She'll realize that the man she betrayed didn't just move on, he leveled up. He didn't become bitter, he became better. And in watching him heal, she begins to see her own downfall. Meanwhile, the man she lost is no longer the same. The pain that once made him doubt himself became his strength. He learned that his value was never defined by how someone treated him, but by how he rose after they didn't. He stopped begging for love and started protecting his peace. His silence, once filled with confusion, now carries clarity. He no longer reacts. He observes. He no longer asks, "Why me?" Instead, he says, "Thank you," because he finally understands that losing her wasn't the end. It was the beginning of his awakening. What she thought was his breaking point became his turning point. And that's what she never expected. She thought he would always care, that she could leave and still be wanted, that his heart would always be open for her return. But when he stopped reacting, when he stopped checking, stopped hoping, that's when her world began to crumble. Because control was her comfort, and when she lost that control, she lost her power. She'll start with curiosity, just checking in, maybe watching his stories, maybe sending a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" But deep down, it's not love reaching out. It's regret, trying to find a way to heal through his forgiveness. That's the cruel irony. She thought she was escaping a man who didn't make her happy, but in truth, she was escaping the version of herself who didn't know how to be grateful. And when she realizes that, it breaks her. Because there's no going back. The man she betrayed no longer exists in the way she remembers. The softness she took advantage of, the patience she tested, the love she once felt safe in, all of it transformed into something stronger, colder, wiser. And that version of him, the one who finally found peace, is untouchable. Healing after betrayal doesn't happen overnight. It's a process that tests your strength, your patience, and your capacity to rebuild from the inside out. But when a man chooses growth over bitterness, something powerful happens. He transforms pain into power. He learns to protect his peace like it's sacred. He starts to understand that closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you create for yourself when you decide to stop bleeding for someone who never cared about the wound. And when that shift happens, he rises in ways the one who hurt him can't comprehend. He begins to focus on what truly matters, his health, his purpose, his peace of mind. He eats better, sleeps better, works harder, and starts taking care of his mental and emotional health. The energy that once went into overthinking now goes into rebuilding. His confidence becomes quieter but stronger. He no longer needs to prove himself or explain what happened. He learns that not every loss is meant to be mourned. Some are meant to wake you up. And while he's moving forward, she's moving in circles. The thrill she once chased is gone, replaced by the emptiness she tried to ignore. The people who once gave her attention have moved on to new distractions, and the silence she created starts to echo. It's in that silence that truth grows louder. She starts to remember the way he used to make her laugh, the way he listened, the safety she felt in his presence. But by then, he's already evolved into someone she can't reach. She'll try to reach out, maybe with a simple message, maybe through mutual friends, but what she doesn't realize is that she's not chasing love, she's chasing forgiveness. She wants relief from her guilt more than she wants reconciliation. And that's where his greatest strength lies. He no longer needs to respond. Because the most powerful revenge isn't anger or coldness, it's peace. Peace that shows her he doesn't need closure, approval, or explanations. His silence says what words never could, that he has outgrown her. And that realization hurts her more than any argument ever would. There comes a moment when she sees him again. maybe in person, maybe online, and she barely recognizes him. The same eyes that once carried pain now shine with clarity. The same heart that once ached for her now beats with purpose. He's calm, focused, content. That kind of transformation can't be faked. It's the result of healing from the inside. And when she realizes she no longer has a place in his story, that's when her heart truly breaks. Not because she lost him, but because she finally understands what she threw away. She'll see him building the life she never believed he could have without her, healthier, stronger, more disciplined, surrounded by people who see his worth. Every achievement, every moment of peace becomes a reminder that she was never his downfall. She was his turning point. And that's the truth. Most people never speak about betrayal. It's not just an ending, it's a transformation. The person who is hurt becomes wiser, more grounded, more self-aware. They learn to love differently, starting with themselves. Because betrayal doesn't have to define you, it can refine you. It can teach you the value of loyalty, not as something you give recklessly, but as something you protect and share with those who deserve it. It can teach you to set boundaries, to listen to your intuition, and to never compromise your peace for temporary affection. It teaches you that growth is the best closure and peace is the ultimate power. And in the end, the real victory isn't about who hurt whom or who regrets what. The real victory is found in healing, in becoming so strong, so calm, so fulfilled that the pain no longer controls your story. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop needing explanations. You stop replaying what went wrong. Because you finally understand that the person who left didn't take anything from you. They just made room for the person you were always meant to become. That's the beauty of the human heart. It can break, rebuild, and still beat with compassion. It can lose faith and still find meaning. And the same experience that once broke you can become the reason you rise. When that happens, you no longer need revenge, validation, or even acknowledgement. Your peace becomes your proof. Your growth becomes your statement. And your silence becomes your victory. So to every man who's been betrayed, lied to, or used, remember this. Her choices were her reflection, not your failure. What she lost was not just you, but the version of herself that felt safe in your love. And what you gained is far more powerful, the strength to rebuild, the wisdom to choose better, and the clarity to never lose yourself in someone else again. Because the greatest lesson betrayal can teach you is this. You don't heal by getting even, you heal by getting better. You don't win by proving her wrong. You win by becoming the man you were always meant to be. The one who doesn't need to chase love, because he's finally learned how to give it to himself.